Hello. Hello, everybody. Hello. Hello, everybody. Hello. Hello, everybody. Just a test. Do you hear me well? Hello? Hello? Just a test. Do you hear me well? Hello? Hello? Once more. Is it now? Is it good now? Good. I hope that now is well. I like. Now is it good now? One more try. Hello, everybody. Do you hear me well now? Good. I hope that now is well.
Can we try if it's a problem only of chameleon, all of us? Can you try to put yourself up?
All of us, I think.
I will just
Chameleon,
connect
you silence yourself. You are not silent. Voila. Now I believe there is no problem because I'm speaking. Did you hear any strange noise?
No.
So the problem is chameleon, it's not the system. It's a problem of should
kind of echo.
Camellia's end.
There's a kind of echo coming from her system device.
Perhaps Camellia, you can try to go out and come in again. To leave the meeting and then to come back to the meeting. Exactly.
Mine works well. You hear me well? Hello, everyone.
So the problem is only
Okay.
Camellia. It's not the system.
Yeah, it's okay.
Camelia, you are mute. You can try to unmute yourself. You are still mute. Still mute. You need to unmute. Voila.
Yes. I did it.
Okay,
Right.
now okay, you can.
Yes. I hope that this time is well. Do you hear me well?
You.
Good. I apologize for the situation. I don't understand what happened. So, just a second. And once again, hello, everybody. We welcome everybody to this webinar, Tai Ji Men, Citizen Diplomacy for Peace and Justice. My name is Camelia Marin, and I am Human Rights Activist, Deputy Director of Sociedad International, and I will moderate the first part of this webinar. Working in Sociedad International, I aim at re-establishing a constructive dialogue between state and social actors, together with spiritual practitioners, in order to decrease the gap of misunderstanding and to stop the abuses of human rights that resulted from it. In my work, this webinar is a very good opportunity to underline the importance of the dialogue. Once again, scholars and Tai Ji Men students discuss the situation of Tai Ji Men spiritual community in Taiwan and the wrongdoings and abuses of the Taiwan's National Taxation Bureau. The International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace is celebrated annually on 24th of April. It seeks to reaffirm the UN Charter and its principles of resolving disputes among countries through peaceful means, and it seeks to promote and support the three pillars of the UN: peace and security, development, and human rights. We can say that there is a great need for a holistic and integrated approach comprising the three pillars of the United Nations, and also to address the very fundamental and core parts of the problem at hand, that is people's mindsets, attitudes, orientations, and relationships vis-à-vis one another. Today, celebrating together in this webinar the International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace, we hope our voices and our concern for Tai Ji Men case to be heard and considered by Taiwanese authorities. Despite 25 years of ongoing violations of their human rights and religious freedom, Tai Ji Men continues to promote love, peace, and conscience around the world, under the guidance of its leader, Dr. Huang Fautre. Tai Ji Men is an organization rooted in esoteric Taoism with tens of thousands of members from all around the world who benefit from practicing Tai Ji Men Qigong. Formally chartered in 1966, the teachings of the organization emphasizes wisdom and martial arts. The organization has been dedicated to promoting a culture of love and peace, as well as improving global citizens' psychical, mental, and spiritual health. For over 25 years, Tai Ji Men has been persecuted in Taiwan, and its leaders and members' human rights and religious freedoms being violated. In 1996, the Taiwanese government conducted a political purge targeting religious organizations. A prosecutor named Huang falsely accused Tai Ji Men and Dr. Huang of fraud, tax evasion, and rising goblins with fake witnesses and fabricated evidences. It took Tai Ji Men more than a decade to be found innocent of tax evasion and all other charges by the Criminal Division of the Supreme Court, which decided in 2007 their innocence, confirming that Tai Ji Men did not owe any tax. However, the case did not end there. Taiwan's National Taxation Bureau ignored the Supreme Court's final decision and continued to issue unjustified tax bills to Tai Ji Men. All this resulted in the unlawful seizure and confiscation of its sacred land for self-cultivation. Massive peaceful protests on the streets and discussions from international scholars and experts in the area of human rights, religion, and law followed, but the situation is not solved yet. With all this repression and human rights abuses over the past 25 years, under the leadership of Dr. Huang, the members of Tai Ji Men have never given up hope and have insisted on ongoing the right thing, seeking for peace, love, and conscience. This is also the reason for which we have today this webinar. And in the very beginning of it, we will start with a video presentation, the Unbreakable Bonds. Please, let's see the first video.
Unbreakable Bonds, Episode 4. Attorney Chen Guoteng is a friend of Tai Ji Men's grandmaster. Naturally, he shouldered the responsibility of finding a group of lawyers. With years of experience in the legal profession and a keen eye, he quickly found a group of excellent lawyers possessing impeccable characters and extensive knowledge. Attorney Su Yuchen, well known for representing Su Qianho and 2 other death row prisoners, was an excellent candidate. Attorney Su was acutely aware of his professional reputation. Without careful considerations, he would not easily take on a case. He took copious notes on the indictment. He questioned the Dizi on each detail in the indictment.
What about this?
After that, he contemplated for a long time. A Dizi couldn't help but plead desperately with Attorney Su.
You took on Su Qianho's case because you believed he was wronged. Tai Ji Men is innocent. Why not help us?
Upon hearing this, Attorney Su accepted the case and formed an unbreakable bond with Tai Ji Men. Attorney Chen Huansheng was a former supervisor of Attorney Chen Guoteng. He recently retired from the criminal division of the Supreme Court. He also taught criminal law and criminal procedural law in a university. He is an expert in criminal law. As soon as he read the indictment, he shook his head.
The way this prosecutor detained people is more terrifying than the Communist Party.
He immediately offered to represent this unjust case. There is also Attorney Lu Pengchuan, who previously worked for the tax authorities. He contributed his expertise in taxation to the team. Attorney Su Sungyu was a former judge. He rose to fame as the leading counsel of the Rongxing Garden Park case. His experience and professionalism were recognized by his peers. Attorney Su joined the legal team too. Attorney Li Chaosung was never notified of his client's arraignment date by prosecutor Ho Quanzhen. Filled with indignation, Attorney Li petitioned the Control Yuan to recall prosecutor Ho. At the same time, he excused himself from the case due to possible lack of neutrality. With Dr. Hong, the Zhang Menren, still in custody, Dizi were worried about his safety. Over the years, the petition was never filed per Dizi's requests for fear of retaliation. Additionally, ex-judge Chen Ming and ex-prosecutor Lin Hongpeng joined the team. Under constant slander, several Dizi proposed the temporary closure of the academies in Taiwan. After visiting all of the academies in Taiwan, attorneys Chen and Lin told the Dizi,
Tai Ji Men is a place filled with positivity. Your academies must remain open until shifus return.
Throughout the turmoil, the Dizi practiced Qigong as usual while waiting for the release of Dr. Huang, his wife, and other Dizi. Attorney Chen Kuan-ming was the last person to join the legal team, marking a pivotal point in the case. As a former judge, he handled cases with extreme rigor. He flipped through the pages of the indictment and asked Dr. Huang to meet him a week later. When Dr. Huang met with him, he said,
"You've encountered a lunatic. Tai Ji Men will be fine."
To better understand what Qigong is, he went to the bookstore and bought more than 10 books after looking up over 100 references. He discovered that the accusations stated in the indictment are all typical phenomena of Qigong. Qigong Menpai, similar to schools, have a tradition of ancestral veneration. Prosecutor Ho twisted the facts and accused Tai Ji Men of practicing dark magic. Attorney Chen sighed and said,
Judicial officials are supposed to conduct a thorough investigation. Holding to their own opinion with great obstinacy harms the citizens.
Attorney Chen Kuan-ming was adamant about confronting the prosecutor's allegations. Since then, the Dizi have no longer remained hidden in the shadows. They made the decision to stand up and confront Prosecutor Ho. At the time of the incident, there was fear of being followed or wiretapped by prosecutors, and having the matter sensationalized by the media. Even lawyers must take extraordinary caution while exercising their right to counsel. It's like white terror. When the attorneys and Dizi needed to communicate, they sometimes had to meet briefly at gas stations. Furthermore, Ho Quanzhen disclosed to the public that he planned to arrest 200 more Dizi. As a result, Dizi were terrified as they drove to meet with the lawyers. Because the Dizi were afraid of being followed, they frequently took the longer route. Many Dizi carried an overnight bag with them at all times, as they fear they could be arrested at any time. Some Dizi in southern Taiwan even hid their address books in pig pens. Why? Due to the fear of implicating other brothers and sisters. Dizi Chen's wife served as an editor in the Ministry of Justice. She knew more about laws and rights than the average person. However, when her husband was taken into custody, her perception of the law was distorted. Life seemed to be teetering on the brink of disaster. She suffered from insomnia, as well as emotional and physical distress. The legal team believed that the case was anything but smooth sailing. It is unprecedented for a case to receive daily media attention. They suspected political manipulation. Backtracking to the end of 1996, 1 month before Tai Ji Men was searched, high-profile cases such as the murders of Liu Pengyu of the Kuomintang and Peng Wan'eryu of the Democratic Progressive Party remained unsolved. Simultaneously, the Taiwanese government launched a religious crackdown. Innocent members of Tai Ji Men were persecuted. The Tai Ji Men case received extensive media coverage, successfully deflecting public attention away from the 2 unresolved murder cases. The Gathering of the Righteous, dear viewer, the unjust case of Tai Ji Men, which was caught in the crossfire, distracted public attention away from 2 high-profile murder cases that occurred at the time. During the court trials, how did Tai Ji Men overcome the ordeal? and get this criminal case of injustice rectified, please watch the 5th episode of Unbreakable Bonds.
Thank you very much for sharing with us this video. It's very impressive to see in a synthesis the wounds, the problems that were created by such violations. Before inviting the scholars, the special guests, I want to thank you very much to Chesnur and Human Rights Without Frontiers for organizing this event. And especially we thank you to the founder and managing director of Chesnur, Professor Massimo Introvigne, which is also the first one now to speak. Professor Introvigne collaborated with OSCE, and after that, he was appointed as chairperson of Observatory of Religious Liberty, organization created by the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs in order to monitor problems of religious liberty on a worldwide scale. Professor Introvigne is also the author of tens of books and articles in the field of sociology of religion. Also, Professor Introvigne is the editor-in-chief of Bitter Winter magazine. And now I invite Professor Introvigne to share with us his expertise in Tai Ji Men case.
Thank you. I want to start with a story concerning Chinese culture and citizen diplomacy. On June 8, 2018, I was in Taiwan for the annual Chesnur conference. And the program included the possibility for conference participants to take a break and attend the unveiling of a 25-meter tall statue of Guai Goose in Nantao County, Taiwan. I mention this story today, April 24, the International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace, because there are good chances that diplomacy for peace was invented by Guai Goose. Guai Goose became of interest to me when I started studying one of Taiwan's many new religions called the Weixin Shenjiao, on which I have written and lectured extensively. It is a central tenet of Weixin Shenjiao that the legitimate successor of the mythical three Chinese ancestors was Guai Goose. Identify with the Bodhisattva Wanchang Lao Tzu, and also this movement believed that Guai Goose appeared to their founder, Grandmaster Juan, mysteriously united with him and gave to him several books of revelation. Now that's about Taiwanese new religion, but of course they have not invented Guai Goose. Guai Goose, or the Sage of Ghost Valley, is the name given to a famous book about peace and diplomacy that appeared in China around the end of the Warring States period. The Warring States period goes from 453 BCE to 221 BCE. So the traditional Chinese narrative is the book was authored by a sage whose name was indeed Guai Goose. And Guai Goose operated the first school of diplomacy in human history. A shrine in the Shuilian Cave in Yunmeng Mountain, Xi County, Henan, the place where the school is said to have been located, was erected in the 19th century and is still visited by pilgrims. I don't say by members of Hsieh. Many pilgrims are interested in Guaigus. Me too, I went there in June 2017 and took a lot of pictures. Having studied the book Guaigus, it was quite emotional in being in the place where, according to Chinese tradition, the first school of diplomacy in human history was located. I was, of course, aware that 20th century Western scholars had contested this traditional narrative. In 1985, Michael Brochard wrote a PhD dissertation on Guaigus, and he said, well, we don't have contemporary sources, and so Guaigus as a person may never have existed. Of course, we have the book Guaigus, but Brochard say perhaps the book was written by a committee of people, not by a single person. So perhaps Guaigus was the name of a group, not of an individual. However, passing from the 20th to the 21st century, other scholars like Garrett Olberding at University of Oklahoma noted that for many other characters in Chinese history, we don't have contemporary sources, yet we believe they existed. So perhaps after all, there was a person called Guaigus and not a group. Be it as it may be, like many other Chinese sages, Guaigus was divinized, deified. After his death, he became a divinity. It was originally a god of commerce, because commerce also needs diplomacy. But in Taiwan, and particularly among the followers of Hsieh, is the main god, so not just a trade god. So what Guaigus taught, and we read in the book Guaigus, is something called Bai He, which is sometimes translated as maneuvers, but is composed of two Chinese characters, meaning open and shut, and also interpreted as speak or remain silent. Indeed, the Guaigus book teaches diplomacy through the alternance of yin and yang, firmness and flexibility, fei qiang, captivate and capture, or wu he, resist and reconcile. And although the expression citizen diplomacy was coined during the Cold War, in fact, some 2,200 years before the war, citizen diplomacy existed. Guaigus had already established the fundamental principle that diplomacy and promoting peace between the states is not a profession, although the school also had professional government officers attending. But more than a profession, diplomacy is a skill. And you can only acquire this skill through self-cultivation. So this has remained a fundamental principle in China and the Sinosphere. And well before the name existed, the East Asian religious movements have practiced citizen diplomacy and promoted ambitious initiatives for peace. And this is certainly the case for Dr. Huang Taozi, the leader of Tai Ji Men and Dizi. While at the cultural and peace events promoted by Tai Ji Men, you can also meet career diplomats. The war tours for peace and love that took Dr. Huang and Tai Ji Men to more than 100 different countries are one of the most massive exercises of citizen diplomacy in the world today. Certainly, Tai Ji Men and Dizi are not professional diplomats, yet they play a diplomatic role through friendship and culture. And they know that their effectiveness as citizen diplomats is rooted in self-cultivation, and that's exactly what Guai-Guz taught so many centuries ago. At the same time, Tai Ji Men and Dizi need the classical art taught by Guai-Guz and this principle of Wu-He, resist and reconcile, to defend their human rights and fight for justice in Taiwan. For many years, we have seen these two processes going together in Tai Ji Men, promoting love and peace throughout the world, but at the same time, protest against persecution and violations of human rights in Taiwan. Citizen diplomacy for peace and citizen diplomacy for justice. And the idea that the two are not separated. So we all have a lot to learn from Tai Ji Men and Dizi, and the reference to Guai-Guz shows that perhaps they are so effective in what they do because they epitomize a millennia-old Chinese tradition and a gift Chinese culture gave to the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Introvigne. And now we will invite Mr. Willy Fautre, who is director and co-founder of Human Rights Without Frontiers, organization based in Belgium. Mr. Willy Fautre is a lecturer in universities in the field of religious freedom and human rights. He has written many articles in university journals and academic publications, held lectures in conferences, testified before interstate organizations, and given interviews to international media. He is also a member of the International Consortium on Law and Religious Studies. Mr. Fautre has extensive experience in freedom of religion or belief around the world. He has carried out fact-finding missions on human rights and religious freedom in more than 25 countries. Mr. Fautre, now the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Camelia. Today, we celebrate the International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace. This day was established on the 12th of December 2018 through a UN resolution and was first observed in 2019. As emphasized in the resolution, the International Day is a reaffirmation of the UN Charter and its principles of resolving disputes among countries through peaceful means. It acknowledges the use of multilateral decision-making and diplomacy in achieving peaceful resolutions to conflicts among nations. Multilateralism is therefore meant to consolidate peace and security, development, and human rights. Multilateralism automatically implies advocacy, solidarity, and international cooperation to reach the objectives that have been set. Multilateralism in the form of membership in international institutions serves to bind powerful nations and gives small powers a voice and influence that they could not otherwise exercise. It allows a small power to influence a great power, but also a great power to influence another great power. Multilateralism paves the way to global governance. It refers to institutions that coordinate the behavior of transnational actors facilitate cooperation, resolve disputes, and alleviate collective action problems. Multilateralism broadly entails making, monitoring, and enforcing rules, but it is not limited to states and governments. Civil society organizations also play a role in domestic and international governance. They can and should contribute to multilateralism because their objective is also to consolidate peace and security, development, and human rights. After over 25 years, Tai Ji Men, a civil society organization, still is in its quest for justice, in its conflict with the National Taxation Bureau. In the implementation of its multilateralism strategy, Tai Ji Men has managed to build up a domestic network and a transnational network of active supporters from all ranks. Advocacy, solidarity, and cooperation are the key words of its strategy. It started many years ago, but there has been a huge acceleration of their multilateral program in the last 2 years. Advocacy has been developed among human rights organizations and the US Commission on International Religious Freedom and the State Department, members of the European Parliament and national parliaments of the European Union, think tanks, and so on. CHISNUR and Human Rights Without Frontiers have largely contributed to it to redress this injustice. For 25 years, Tai Ji Men and its Dizi have been publicly protesting and raising their voices, not only in Taiwan, but also in major centers of international political power, such as the Capitol in the United States. These domestic and international networks of solidarity with Tai Ji Men are closely working together and coalescing for the sake of justice in their case. Just focusing on the last 10 months, the number of initiatives has been absolutely amazing. Starting with June of last year, the ECOSOC accredited NGO, CAP in France, Coordination of Associations for Freedom of Conscience, submitted a written statement to the 47th session of the UN Human Rights Council, mentioning the Tai Ji Men case. In July of last year, the Tai Ji Men case was discussed at the side event of the International Religious Freedom Summit in Washington, D.C., with the summit leader's ambassador, Sam Brownback, and Mrs. Katrina Lantos-Sweat expressing their solidarity to Tai Ji Men. In August, the French NGO CAP, again, for the second time, submitted a written statement to the UN Human Rights Council for their 48th session, in which it mentioned the Tai Ji Men case. In October of last year, the Tai Ji Men case was presented in a session of the Parliament of the World's Religions. In December last, the date of the fateful anniversary of the Tai Ji Men case, there were 5 events, 2 in the US and 3 in Taiwan. On the 6th of December, an international forum on the Tai Ji Men case was organized in Washington, D.C. 1 day later, the first international press conference on the Tai Ji Men case was organized in Washington. On the 13th of December, 25 scholars and human rights activists from all over the world wrote to Taiwan's president, Tsai Ing-wen, urging a solution of the Tai Ji Men case. Later in December, massive street protests reminded the Taiwanese that the Tai Ji Men case, which started on the 19th of December 1996, had been going on for 25 years. And 2 days before the end of last year, the Taiwan Association for Financial Criminal Law Study, the Tax and Legal Reform League, and 8 other civil society organizations hosted an international press conference on the Tai Ji Men case at the National Taiwan University Alumni Association. This year, in February, the Tai Ji Men case was discussed at a seminar held both in person and via web, with the participation of scholars, politicians, and human rights activists, hosted by the Tai Ji Men Qigong Academy in Walnut, California. In February again, CAP, the French NGO, submitted for a 3rd time a written statement to the UN Human Rights Council mentioning the Tai Ji Men case. A lot of international webinars have also successfully been organized every month to put the Tai Ji Men case on the radar of the international community. All these events show that Tai Ji Men has really understood and integrated the concept of multilateralism in its strategy. They could only take place and be successful with the full commitment of their Dizi in Taiwan, in the US, and in Europe. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fautre. And indeed, a lot of work, several scholars discussing this case of Tai Ji Men, and we are still wondering how does the Taiwanese authorities are not taking a stand and solving such a situation, because the Taxation Bureau is not the only one that exists in Taiwan. So for sure, there are authorities competent, in charge, which may concern about this case and take a stand. And now we move to our next guest, Mr. Marco Respinti. He is an Italian professional journalist, translator, and lecturer. Mr. Respinti serves as the director in charge of the online scholarly The Journal of Chesnur, and also of Bitter Winter, a magazine of religious liberty and human rights, which is also published online by Chesnur. And as we could see also, there are several publications done by Bitter Winter, and several of them, there are very much rising issues of human rights, and especially in Tai Ji Men case, at least for me, they were very much enlightening with the information that they brought. Mr. Respinti, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Diplomatic relationships among countries are held in great respect, and rightly so. In fact, when a country, by means of its ambassadors, openly moves in one or another direction, it deserves front page news. The presence of official diplomatic bodies in a country is a sign of peace, or at least of good intentions. On the contrary, when a country calls its ambassador back, tensions and crises are at the door. And when ambassadors are withdrawn, the winds of war, if not actual war, fill the air. The importance of official diplomacy is, of course, its officiality. But officiality is a double-edged sword. Official bodies may, in fact, be slow and too timid to take substantial action, at least sometimes. We should then never underestimate what another form of diplomacy can accomplish. It is the citizen diplomacy of which we're speaking today. With its parallel and sometimes even confidential ways, citizen diplomacy may move quicker and at some extent lighter. It is frequent to see citizen diplomacy at work through indirect tools like scientific and cultural exchanges, or even sport. As such, citizen diplomacy is the operation of self-styled, volunteer, ambassadors of goodwill who treasure mutual understanding among people and peace among nations. Due to its more informal attitude and less need of a public proscenium, a citizen diplomacy can or could accomplish much. Its more ethics and less etiquette attitude may score goals that official diplomacy doesn't even dream of. In many ways, citizen diplomacy comes from the same mother as advocacy, and we all know how these twins, operated by NGOs, or organized groups, or popular influencers, can be effective, even pressing governments and their official diplomacies. This explains the tendency of supporters of various causes who enroll VIPs, well-known testimonials, and pop authorities like actors, rock singers, and fashion models, for example, to advance a case, make a statement, or launch a campaign. In brief, one of the great advantages of citizen democracy is that its public accountability is much less legally bounding than that of official diplomacy. But this strength signals also the limits of citizen democracy, when unscrupulous minds arbitrarily translate all this into fabrication of arguments to serve selfish interests, or worse, ideological causes. This is the case of what Hungarian-born American political sociologist Paul Hollander labeled as political pilgrims in a 1981 as important as neglected book under the same title. There, he researches and describes the fate of those renowned Western intellectuals who, in various decades, made field trips to such places as the Soviet Union, Communist China, and castrist Cuba, where human rights were held in great contempt, and persecutions of religions, ethnic groups, and dissidents were a daily nightmare. Hollander was a serious scholar and an amiable person. Years ago in Spain, I discussed the topic of this book with him. The aim of those political pilgrims, it was clear, was to support those greatly unjust regimes and discredit all possible criticism of them. Let me indulge a little bit more on the dark side of citizen diplomacy to underline the case of the New York Times Anglo-American journalist Walter Duranty, the man who won the Pulitzer Prize for denying the Holodomor, or the immense slaughter of millions of Ukrainians in the late 1930s. That time, the lucid folly of Stalin starved an entire nation to death, both to punish it for its resistance to Marxist forced collectivism, and we all know how much Ukrainians can resist evil, and to force reality to obey the totally exposed Lamarckian biological fallacies of Soviet geneticist Trofim Lysenko, whose flawed theory were later applied also in communist China with other millions of deaths. Mine here is a cautionary tale on the possible misuse of the citizen diplomacy. But again, what is citizen diplomacy at its core? I found no better way to respond than comparing it to another concept, the citizen soldier. This comparison may sound odd, since we are, of course, speaking of the good use of diplomacy to achieve peace and justice. But I have my reason. No one really knows when and where the concept of a citizen soldier was born. We have this example in antiquity as well as in the modern age, from ancient Rome to feudal times, from the American founding to Tyrol and La Vendée Militaire. Instead of a body of people compelled to serve in arms the state and its ends, so possibly also its ideology and its misdeeds, the concept of citizen soldiers led the defense of the city to a volunteer operation of free men who take arms at the last resort, do it for a very limited goal and time, and then return to their ordinary occupations and families. This citizen voluntary militia aimed at the common good, even using sometimes extreme temporary means, had also an eminent political counterpart in classical Roman time. Lucius Quinctius Cincinnatus was a Roman patrician who lived during the age of the Republic. He strongly opposed the manifestation of egalitarianism at that early stage of history, never put his interest above those of the res publica, and retired working in his own small firm. One day, the Roman motherland was invaded by Equi, a nation that the Romans considered barbaric. Brave, mature, and reliable, Cincinnatus was appointed commander-in-chief of the Republic because of its well-known civic virtues, and with the title of dictator. In its original meaning, this word was not so scary as it is today, meaning the one ruler in case of a clear and present danger, able to move quickly and safely. But of course, a man alone who is given total power is a possible danger, hence the modern meaning of dictatorship that we all fear. Cincinnatus was instead a man of honor, and once his mandate was over and the threat to the city vanished, he gave back power to the Republic, returning to the work in his farm. I told you a tale of love for the city. So far, we have listed the citizen soldier, the citizen politician, and the citizen diplomats. All of them are examples of public virtue, and all three examples have limits that must be carefully respected unless we want to fall into the dark side of our story. Now, peace enters this discourse when we reflect upon the fact that the true meaning of all civic obligations and citizens' sense of duty towards the city is to bring about peace. Only peace makes civilization prosper, because peace is the true name of progress. But many times, governments are not able to secure peace and make civilization advance. Now, Tai Ji Men enters the case right here. Its advocacy for peace is a formidable tool, which in turn makes a civilization thrive. Its advocacy is an example of peace in action, because it is peaceful as well as determined. Tai Ji Men's citizen diplomacy has pursued what I would call a pre-political aim: call the attention of political and religious leaders to conscience. Before discussing specific situation and conflict, it is essential to acknowledge that problems can be solved only after the primacy of conscience has been recognized. An outside observer might have predicted that persecution and harassment in Taiwan, through what we all call the Tai Ji Men case, would have derailed the effort of Dr. Huang and his Dizi as citizen diplomats. In fact, this did not happen. Actually, persecution and tax harassment reinforced the determination of Tai Ji Men in advocating internationally for conscience and the civilization of peace and love. Tai Ji Men serves as an example for all advocacy groups aimed to substantiate citizen diplomacy in opposition to Hollander's political pilgrims and Stalin's counter-duranty, and Tai Ji Men should be imitated. I conclude explaining why. Tai Ji Men Dizi are firm in protesting when protest is needed. Yet when they bring the message of peace, love, and conscience to the world, they focus on the positive side of how harmonious and well-ordered a world where the primacy of conscience is acknowledged would be. Basically, the citizen ambassadors of Tai Ji Men are repeating to the whole world what St. Augustine said centuries ago, and I quote, "Peace between man and man is well-ordered concord. Domestic peace is the well-ordered concord between those of the family who rule and those who obey. Civil peace is a similar concord among the citizens. The peace of all things is the tranquility of order. Order is the distribution which allots things equal and unequal, each to its own place. End of quote. In sum, the other name of peace is justice. I had the impression that today, thanks to the Tai Ji Men long suffering, which motivated them to look at the world with a compassionate gaze, we wrote a new important chapter in the history of citizen diplomacy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Respinti. Indeed, we can say that this case is important, and especially the perseverance of Tai Ji Men spiritual community in not giving up to their beliefs, to their cause. It's impressive to stand for more than 25 years in order to not let the Taiwanese government to impose to all the spiritual communities all kind of abusive payments and taxation and so on. It is brave courage and excellent for the citizen diplomacy. And now we'll move for the second part of this webinar, which will be introduced by Mr. Alessandro Amicarelli. Attorney Alessandro Amicarelli is the current chairman and spokesman of the European Federation for Freedom of Belief, FOB. He is a frequent speaker at academic and legal events and conferences and meetings held in different countries and at different places. Dr. Amicarelli has extensively lectured in human rights, taught courses on the international protection of human rights, and he has a strong interest for minorities and religious freedom of both new religious movements and traditional minority religious and spiritual groups, and of their members. Please, Dr. Amicarelli, have the floor.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, Camelia. Thank you for the nice presentation. Thank you for the very good moderation of the meeting today. Thank you to the speakers for the insights you gave from different perspectives. We all care about the basic principles that govern or should govern the modern societies: human rights, democracy, rule of law. We all believe that Taiwan is the other China, the democratic China. And for this reason, we all are shocked that the case of Tai Ji Men is continuing for the last 26 years. This is the reason why we all are making pressure so that the Taiwanese authorities do change their behavior in respect of Tai Ji Men as an organization and as a group of individuals doing the good for the society of Taiwan and for the entire world. As in all webinars that we are having in regards to Tai Ji Men, we have notorious speakers and experts and members of the Tai Ji Men giving testimonies regarding their experiences. Before moving to the second session with the testimonies of the Dizi, we have a video called "Illegal Tax Officials in Canada Face Severe Punishments." So we can now watch this short video and then move on with the second part of the webinar.
Illegal tax officials in Canada face severe punishments. Tony and Helen are a young married couple. who owns and runs bars, motels, and restaurants in Vancouver, Canada. Worried that the bank would no longer accept the old notes, they turned all of the old 50 and 100 Canadian notes that had been in the safe deposit box for the past 30 years into cash, and deposited them into the account. The tax office was surprised when they discovered a big sum of money had been deposited into their accounts without notice. They determined that the two had hidden their business earning, charged them with 21 counts of tax evasion, and worked with prosecutors to compel a guilty plea. The court discovered the truth after a 5-year investigation and declared all the charges against them to be false. Tony, on the other hand, has been plagued by insomnia, excessive drinking and smoking, and his health has been ruined as a result of these false accusations. Helen has become scared of other people's suspicious looks, to the point where she has hesitated to enter her own restaurant. Tricia, their daughter, even changed her last name to avoid being affiliated with criminality. Despite their innocence, the couple claimed they had been wrong and went to court to sue the prosecution, CRA, and the tax investigator. These officials, according to the Supreme Court, covered up and falsely reported evidence, maliciously used the state's judicial machinery to persecute innocent people, exploited the unequal power between the state and the individuals, and violated the people's basic rights and must be strongly accused and punished. As a result, the Tax Bureau was ordered to pay the couple $750,000 Canadian dollars in damages for malicious prosecution, as well as an additional $300,000 Canadian dollars per person for irreparable reputational damage. Litigation cost of around $348,000 Canadian dollars, totaling nearly 1.7 million Canadian dollars. Despite the large settlement, their lives were flipped upside down a long time ago, and the two eventually divorced, leaving the family broken and unable to reunite it. Government officials should not treat citizens as thieves or bully them in the name of public power, despite the fact that being in the public service makes it easy to practice. The judiciary is the last line of defense for justice, and officials should not use it as a thug to protect one another. Instead, they should respect the judiciary's conscience, restore justice to the people, and be held accountable for law and discipline violation.
As we could see in the video, justice was restored in Canada. Justice was also restored in Taiwan in terms of judiciary cases, but still the public authorities are not implementing the decisions of the Supreme Court. We can now move on with the testimonies from the Dizi of Tai Ji Men. The first is Emily Huang. Miss Emily Huang is Airline Chief Purser and a Tai Ji Men Dizi. Please, Emily, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Let me prepare something first. I'm a little bit nervous because it's my first English speech. So, okay. Everyone, my name is Emily. I'm so glad I have a chance to speak with everyone today. I have 20 years of experience as a flight attendant and a Tai Ji Men Dizi. I had a many wonderful journey in my career. I've been flying with the president's special planes to the 4 tiny Central and South America countries, and also be participants in the first meeting as a special plane service with the many particulars and the corporate personalities. But it is my participated in the World Love and the Peace World Goodwill Travel of the 2017 Turkey to promote the love and peace in the person that made me most proud of the unforgettable. Before packing on the journey, I keep thinking about how my shifu Hong Daozi and the volunteer has traveled all over the 5 continental to promote love and peace. Was faced of the different countries, cultures, and language, and how they have overcome all kinds and barriers to the convent love and peace. During this visit, I learned from the Dr. Hong that the communicate of love is not limited by language or the cultural background. It can be feel just a genuine smell and few simple words, love, and love has no boundaries. On these years, 222 Peace Memorial Days and UN Zero Discrimination Days, human rights protection from my shifu, the Zhang Menren of the Tai Ji Men and the vice chairman of the United Nations NGO Association of the World Citizens. Dr. Hong said in his speech, if there are no human rights, then there will be no peace. It is a goal of the international constitutions and the practice. When they are conscious, they will have a love. And when they are love, they will be human rights. And when they are human rights, then we will have a real peace. To achieve the goal of the sustainable development, all countries must be aside agendas until they cooperate and eliminate discrimination in the equality. To achieve this goal, we must awaken everyone's inner conscience. As a leader in the fight against discrimination, the governments must be in placement human rights protections and refrain the legal and the tax system. Enforces must be beside by the principle of the equality before the law and avoid the social and the strict discretions, especially the gender, class, insist and the regulations inequality. During my 20 years in the advanced industry, the country that impressed the most is Singapore. In countries whose peoples are different race, including the Indians, Chinese, Malaysia, American, and the Europeans, living together in around the 7,200 square meters. There is a Mexico near to the temple in the city, and the Arab area in the right near to the Little India. People from the many countries and the cultures backgrounds are respectful for each other, and their countries, their cultures and eating hobbies differs. You can eat the different flavors of the food in the food court. Even the sign on the street will be many different kinds of the language. That is clear that Singapore government place high values on the human rights of all race, and they right to feel implement. On the other hand, the Tai Ji Men grievance case in Taiwan, which has been referred by the expert and the scholars as a law and the test 228, become of the human rights beliefs and has yet to resort. in purge and the persecutions in the name of the crackdowns. Prosecutors Huang fabricate face witness and fake evidence of the Tai Ji Men of the Fox and the tax evasions. Even Hsieh, a tax collector who complied with the perjured and the dead times. Rarely the truth and the case led to the Huang, the end of the battle against the cancers. As earlier as 2007, the spread Cultura and the rule the Tai Ji Men was insert and the owner no test. And all legal stations should be not revoked. However, the NTC continued to illegally impress the test and even cooperate with the discrimination informations. The legal actions over the Tai Ji Men's holy lands and reclaimed it to stay owned. And sincerely developed the Tai Ji Men's shifu and Dizi over their spread freedoms, hiding their way to the promotion. In violent violation of the rule of the basic human right and the right to freedoms, the regulation believe the right to choose a cultural life. The international covenant, the human right and the constitutions, discrimination, the unequally treatment of the shifu and the Dizi of the Tai Ji Men has been raised a great concern and a strong support for the international human rights expert and the regulation circles. We condemn all forms of the aberrations, discrimination, and the valuation that impede the enjoyment of the United Nations University Human Rights, say the coordinate. Presence of the conditions of the world citizens. Recently, the 220 Global Happiness Report was a result, and the Taiwan won the first place in the East Asia. I really can't believe that the execution officers of the governments of the 2026 happiness country in the world were facilitations over the schedules. Tai Ji Men's practice set for the shop, but extra money without the legal backgrounds. Why has the Tai Ji Men been descriptions against the treatments equally for more than 26 years about the continue to insist on the truth? Because in order to have a truth, state officers must be understand what is right, wrong, good and bad, so that they can have opportunity to awaken their conscience and change their mistake. So that belief in the human right will be longer be available, and so our country can be truly become a happiness that embrace human rights truthfully. When the days come, I will finally to able to proud to tell everyone I'm from Taiwan, then my favorite country is Taiwan. I sincerely hope the Taiwanese governments can truly implement the true Taiwan in the variables, become a democracy, cooperate with the citizens of the world to the maintain world stables and harmony. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emily. Thank you for your presentation. That was great. No nervousness at all. It was great. Thank you very much. And with you, we all hope that the Tai Ji Men case will be solved by the government implementing the respect of your human rights. We now have a second Dizi, Miss Joyce Huang, who is a senior high school student and a Tai Ji Men, Dizi. Please, Joyce, the floor is yours.
Hello, distinguished guests and online viewers. I'm Joyce, 18 years old, a high school student and also a Tai Ji Men Dizi. On this day in 2018, the United Nations declared an International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace, which reaffirms the United Nations Charter and its principle of resolving disputes between countries through peaceful means. It acknowledged the use of multilateral decision-making and diplomacy in achieving peaceful resolutions of conflicts among nations. This signifies that countries are starting to focus on global cross-cutting issues, such as climate change, geopolitical tensions, humanitarian crisis, and migration crisis, which invoke national values and interests and require collective attention and action. I remember in early April 2018, I went to New York with my shifu and Tai Ji Men brothers and sisters to promote the importance of love and peace, and participated in the annual conference, co-organized by Federation of World Peace and Love and Association of World Citizens of the United Nations. What impressed me the most was that time when I was having pop-up action and given on-street advocacy with my brothers and sisters at the 9/11 Memorial Plaza and New York Times Square. We asked the local people 3 questions. What is love? What is peace? What can we do to create a world of love and peace? Together with the local residents, we shouted the slogan, "Change the road with us." In the process of interacting with the local people, I felt not only the love we gave to them, but also the two-way, warm love exchanged with each other. I learned from my shifu that the idea of spreading love and peace is not limited by language, culture, race, or color, and that the warmth of each other can be filled with sincere, simple smiles and words, and that love has no boundaries. I wasn't even born when the 9/11 terrorist attack happened. Standing at the 9/11 Memorial Plaza in New York, we put our palms together, balled our hands, and prayed sincerely for the road. We sang love and peace song hand in hand. I was so touched at that time and realized that love and peace are really precious and important. I once listened to a podcast channel called Story Corps, which mainly tells the stories of real events in different countries. On the anniversary of 9/11 last year, an interview with the victims and their families was aired. And I heard an account from one of the victims who had experienced 9/11. He said, "The cloud hit and actually, you were in the middle of that cloud. You couldn't see anything. You had to stop moving. The smell, the dust, pieces of stuff, and the wind. And I really thought that the top of the building fell off, and then it cleared out." The victims sound so scared and helpless. It was as painful as opening their scars for the victims to speak of their trauma. It is beyond our imagination to face the horror of war. And only love and peace in people's hearts can eliminate the hatred and pain in the world. The COVID-19 pandemic, which has been going on for more than 2 years, has changed the life we are used to. The war between Russia and Ukraine, which broke out in February, has made vivid the war I had read in history books. Though Taiwan is relatively safe, I feel unsecured because the quarter-century-long persecuted Tai Ji Men case hasn't been vindicated. I have seen plenty of problems in Taiwan's tax system through this case. Tai Ji Men shifu, brothers and sisters, have traveled to 5 continents, visited more than 100 countries, and participated in more than 3,000 domestic and international cultural performances, promoting love and peace, and bringing Taiwan to the world. However, in Taiwan, Tai Ji Men has been oppressed and prosecuted by the National Taxation Bureau because of a false case 26 years ago, which resulted in an illegal tax bill. On December 19, 1996, Tai Ji Men was illegally searched and investigated by the unscrupulous prosecutor, Huang, and prosecuted in the following year. Not only has this case caused great harm to Tai Ji Men, but more than 10,000 families have been severely affected. Although the third instance criminal court in the Tai Ji Men case ruled on July 13, 2007, that there were no fraud or tax evasion and cleared the name of Tai Ji Men, the NTB keeps issuing illegal tax bills against Tai Ji Men according to the prosecutor's illegal indictment. It's not only failed to revoke the illegal bills, but collaborated with the Enforcement Agency of Ministry of Justice on August 21st, 2020, to illegally auction off Tai Ji Men's land in Nelly, which is intended for the self-cultivation center. It is outrageous that a few unscrupulous officials can connect the entire government. For 26 years, Tai Ji Men's tax authorities have ignored the opinions of outside experts and failed to consult any experts. They have ignored all the court's decisions, even the Supreme Court. They issued illegal tax bills without conducting substantive checks, and even concealed evidence, forged documents, covered up all evidence in favor of the people, lied to the public, and auctioned off Tai Ji Men's property. They didn't follow the Supreme Court's decision, nor did they apologize to and compensate Tai Ji Men, Shifu, and Dizi. There are problems in every country, such as environmental issues, energy issues, political party struggles, international competition, etc. But Taiwan, which claims to be a democratic country on the rule of law, has an extraordinary problem: unfair and non-transparent taxation, and indiscriminately issued bills, which businessmen are forced to pay. Although I need not to pay taxes yet, I think that for the sake of myself, who will have to pay taxes in the future, and every citizen in Taiwan, tax reform is a matter of great urgency and should be taken seriously by everyone. I'm now a senior in high school and about to go on to college, shouldering the responsibility for the future of our country. If the government doesn't solve the chaos of Taiwan's unfair tax system, it will be difficult to retain business and provide an environment without tax disaster for talents. Maybe I will also have to separate from my family and work abroad after I graduate from college. That's why I stand out to join the forum today and call on the government to solve the problem of legal tax infringement on human rights and return justice to the victims. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joyce. We always appreciate the testimonies of the Dizi, and we even more appreciate these testimonies when the Dizi are so young as you, and the age is not a limit for providing your feedback about the experience in Tai Ji Men and with the discrimination that Tai Ji Men has been suffering for the last quarter of a century. The next Dizi is Mr. Hsieh. Alan is a patent engineer and a Dizi of Tai Ji Men. Please, Alan, the floor is yours.
Dear host, guests, my name is Alan, a patent engineering, and I'm honored to participate in the International Day of Multilateralism and the Diplomacy for Peace on live phone. I would like to share with you that multilateralism is actually a product of era of economic globalization. And lastly, the international community should be globalized according to the rules and agreement reached by all countries, instead of being ruled by only one or a few countries. As far as I know, agreement on trade-related accidents of intellectual property rights, TRIPS, is the most important intellectual instrument in the globalization intellectual property rules. It emphasizes that the countries cannot be sacrificed human rights for their own interests. It means that human rights take procedures over the interests. It can be seen that the original intention is very kind. However, the demand for vaccine has increased greatly under the COVID-19 pandemic starting in 2016. The WTO patent expansion proposal was proposed by more than 16 countries, and the United States President Joe Biden agreed that the vaccine manufacturers should take inventives to give up the patent for the COVID-19 vaccine, so that the developing countries with limited financial capacity can procedure the vaccine on their own and speed up the vaccine access. However, the idea was justified by the European Union. The member states have two oriented considerations. Is human right important or the benefit important? Later, the proposal expands to patent protection of the new vaccine or treatment method was rejected and shelved under the opposition of the European Union, which shows that the conflict between the natural interest and human right cannot be solved by just only signing treaties. The protection of human rights can only be achieved through the conscience and practical actions by all countries. As you know, patent law protects the invention's rights to income, but the invisible assets, just like the cultural preservation, people need to understand, respect, protect, and pass on with conscience. But unfortunately, there is a 26-year-long case of human rights persecution in Taiwan, also a persecuted case of religious human rights and cultural option rights. The UPS case of Tai Ji Men happened on December 19, 1996. For the prosecutor Hou Kuan-ren searches at Tai Ji Men, and the next day spread the false information to the media that Tai Ji Men has committed at $3.1 billion through the invoking tax invention, created false witness and wise evidence, and transferred to the illegal indictment to NTB. However, NTB illegally levied the tax on the basis of false indictment information and factored false amount and claimed that Tai Ji Men has evaded tax without any intervention. Such actions by the prosecutor and the NTB are clearly a violation of procedure justice. In spite of this, NTB was not revoke the illegal tax bills, seriously harm on the taxpayers' human rights, and with administrative enforcement agency to the illegal auction of the land intended for self-conservation centers of Tai Ji Men. This is not only took people off their proprietary rights, but also severely damaged their right to freedom or religion and cultural rights. Tai Ji Men Shifu and Dizi has traveled to 101 countries and 5 continents to promote a conscious culture of love and peace. In 2001, Tai Ji Men received the first place in martial art in Kung Fu group demonstration at the 8th World Cup International Martial Arts Championships and was awarded at the first place in 4 competitions, including initial Quan, just like Chinese boxing, external Quan, Weaponry, and Qigong. Tai Ji Men has also bestwarded the World Top Outstanding Performers Golden Award. It makes Taiwan shine in the world. On December 16, 2020, the traditional martial art of Tai Ji Quan was officially inscribed in the UNESCO representative list of the incredible cultural heritage of humanity, which shows that the international community is committed to preserving the Chinese culture. On May 20, 2012 in Taiwan, Bureau of Cultural Heritage, Ministry of Culture was officially established to promote and protect incredible cultural assets and ensure that the important incredible assets do not fade away as the year passes. Instead of protected, the ancient Arctic cultures of Tai Ji Men has been publicly persecuted, even through the Prince Code as rules in 3 trials that has no crime, no tax evasion. But NTB has not only failed to revoke the tax bills according to the law, but on August 21st, 2020, together with the excused administration, is forced on auctioning of the land intended of a self-conservation center of Tai Ji Men, and took it back into the state ownership. This is obviously for the purpose that attempt the tax intents and enforce bonus, which that has no legal source. The United States Security State and Anthony Blinken told the U.S. Secretary Council in May 2021. He told that multilateralism is the best tool to address the challenges such like the COVID-19 and the climate crisis and human rights indignity, and at the heart of international order. However, the illegal actions of NTB in Taiwan has not only persecuted incredible cultural assets, but also harmed people's freedom of religion belief and basically dignity of humanity. I would like to approach to the government that if Taiwan want to gain more international recognition, to redress the Tai Ji Men fame case is necessary and immediate. Only this way can we demonstrate our determination to attach importance to human rights protection and achieve a mutually beneficial and progressive peace in our country. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alden, for your testimony. And we agree it's a matter of dignity. And it's also a matter of more efforts to be taken by the Taiwanese government also, and with the aim of being recognized internationally, and especially at these times also with problems with mainland. Thank you very much. We now have one more testimony. The testimony is by Mollie Jian. Mollie is 9-year-old, very young, Dizi, and a primary school pupil, and her presentation is pre-recorded, and we can watch it together now.
Hello everyone, I am Mollie. I am a 3rd grade student, and I am 9 years old. I had a very different experience from my classmates. That is, I joined many activities of the Tax and Legal Reform League with my parents. I hand out flyers at night markets and hold up signs on the street and asking everyone to pay attention to the law and tax issue in Taiwan. I remember that once I went to Xinjiang to send flyers on the street, and I shared the flyers to an old grandpa. He said, "Thank you. I will read them carefully and share to my friends." I also take part in march many times. Sometimes it was hot in the summer. Sometimes it was wet and cold in the rain. Sometimes my feet were very sore. And once I had a nosebleed because it was so hot. But I still follow everyone all the way. I hope the government can hear our voice and change the bad things that are happening now, so that we can make Taiwan better. I really want to invite more people to join us. One year, I went to Pingxi with Tax and Legal Reform League to release sky lanterns for blessing, and I was a bit afraid of the fire, but I was willing to do so, because I hope I could let God and more people know our wishes. So, I encouraged myself to light the sky lanterns and pray. Of course, in a way, I am trying hard for myself. I know that some tax officials just want to get the bonus, and issues tax bill did not check the real situation. It is not good. If we change the bad thing now, I will be able to live in a good place when I grow up. But if we don't do it and change it now, I am afraid that the country will become worse in the future. In addition, I am not only a volunteer of the Tax and Legal Reform League, but I am also a Dizi of Tai Ji Men. I grew up in Tai Ji Men, but there is a December 19 incident happened in more than 25 years ago. I was not born at that time, and what I know is, the prosecutor said Tai Ji Men was a crime school. He was using false witnesses and fake evidence, asked the NTV to issue a tax bill, and the NTV did not check and just issues the tax bills. Finally, the court says Tai Ji Men is not guilty and won't no tax. But the NTV is still unwilling to admit their wrongdoing and does not revoke the tax bill. Moreover, the NTV auction then to be used for Tai Ji Men Academy. Together with Tai Ji Men brother and sister, we learn from my shifu, Dr. Hong Daozi. Shifu is like an elder to me, teaching me to practice Qigong, to do good things, to be peaceful and loving to everyone. We are a warm family, and it is totally different from the crime school. The gift we give to Shifu is not the tuition fee. Recently, I saw a video on the YouTube. My father said that it was a meeting in the Legislative Yuan in 1989, when the head of the Ministry of Education, Zheng Wenchang, said, Tai Ji Men indeed is not a crime school. The head of Taipei NTV, Zhang Shenhe, was also there. So, he already knew it. But how could he still issue the tax bill and bully us? In school, our teacher teaches us we need to be honest and correct the mistake if we did something wrong. So, the NTV should show their conscience and revoke the tax bill. In this way, we can practice Qigong in Tai Ji Men and promote love and peace and do good things to the world. Not only the Tai Ji Men case, I hope the NTV will also stop other cases and make a country with a good system, so that I can grow up happily. Thank you for listening. Hello, everyone.
And thank you very much to the young Mollie for her testimony. We can see she has the passion of the human rights activist, even though being so young, and we wish her all the best. We now have Miss Erica Wu. Erica is a student at New York University in Abu Dhabi, and Tai Ji Men Dizi. Please, Erica, the floor is yours for your testimony.
Hi everyone, I'm Erica and I'm 20 years old. I was born in the United States. I grew up in Taiwan. I go to university in United Arab Emirates, Abu Dhabi, and I'm currently studying in Argentina for a semester. While some have the mobility to travel or move from country to country, and others actually don't. Yet, we are no less important because every one of us on this planet is part of one big family. We are all world citizens. We all deserve human rights and peace, and in our interconnected world, multilateralism and diplomacy are essential in creating peace to attain peace on a global scale. While multilateralism and diplomacy might seem far away from us, I've learned from Dr. Huang, the president of World Peace and Love, that each of us serves as an ambassador for peace. Multilateralism and diplomacy essentially just mean cooperation and communication. While I befriend people from all over the world, I have realized an essential component in communicating with peace and for peace, which is open-mindedness. When engaging in conversations, one must not just express oneself, but also listen and be open-minded about what the other person expresses. Being open-minded allows us to move the conversation forward in a peaceful manner towards peace. This is the same case with multilateralism and diplomacy. Conflicts within nations have often been due to their unwillingness to be open-minded or change even when there are multilateralism and diplomacy. Many times this leads to suffering and violation of human rights on the other side. It is thus very important to uphold peace by staying open-minded. While peace is important in the international scene of multilateralism and diplomacy, it is also important to consider what that means for the local community. This again requires the government to listen to the people. Although I have been in the international community, I have realized that if I want to create an impact, the most effective and best place to implement is in my local community, where I can give back to my society. I have thus adopted the mindset of think globally, act locally. While we are aware of the interconnectedness of the world, such as between countries, we should start by acting on what we can do to formulate peace around us. As a world citizen, I volunteered for Dr. Huang's movement of conscience, in which we shared the importance of conscience in our local community in Taiwan and also around the world. Even when we share about conscience abroad, we encourage them to act locally to create peace around them. When different corners of the world uphold their conscience and account for each other's human rights, that is when we get closer to world peace. Dr. Huang, also the Zhangmenren of Tai Ji Men, was illegally accused of fraud and tax evasion in 1996. Yet, in 2007, the Supreme Court brought Tai Ji Men justice by ruling Tai Ji Men as no crime, no tax, and no violation of the Tax Collection Act. However, the unjust tax case derived from the unjust criminal case is still present. Through the government's unjust treatment of Tai Ji Men, Taiwanese citizens continue to face the remnants of the martial law period that threatens human rights until today. Tai Ji Men is just one of the victims, as there are so many people in Taiwan who are also facing persecution by public power and are unable to seek justice. For instance, the unreasonable bonus system incentivizes tax officials to issue as many tax bills as possible, because this leads to more bonuses. To get more bonuses, officials can then disobey their conscience and issue tax bills without evidence to citizens, which can mean incorrect or extra tax bills. They can do this because even if they do, when citizens appeal, they almost don't ever succeed. Taiwan's administrative court has always been known as the losing court. According to the Judicial Yuan, Judicial Statistics Annual Report, from 2013 to 2017, the average winning rate of the people in the highest administrative courts tax litigation was only 0.0524. It can be said that the Taiwanese people's losing rate is the highest in the world. Even if they won the administrative court ruling, the judge usually just asks the tax agency to reevaluate the tax bill, for which the tax agency can change the number and issue the bill again. Citizens also need to pay 1/3 of the accused amount of money during the appeal process measure to prevent their property from being seized and auctioned, and among other measures. This injustice threatens people's financial rights, causing many businesses to go bankrupt. People have also fallen ill or committed suicide because of long-term oppression by unfair tax bills. When Dr. Huang and members of Tai Ji Men discovered this human rights abuse ingrained in the system of the government, we decided to stand up for society and act locally. We raised awareness to the public about this tax burden by collaborating with the Tax and Legal Reform League. We also tried to communicate with the government about this issue. However, these systemic errors that threaten people's human rights and livelihood are still in place. Achieving systemic change requires a collective effort. We hope that the government can adopt an open mind and communicate with its citizens with goals of upholding human rights and achieving peace. As a world citizen, I care about the world and even more about my country. When human rights abuses are happening in other places, I stay aware and see how I can help. When human rights abuses are happening in my country, I take action, including speaking up today. With this said, I extend my gratitude towards the international panelists here today for being a world citizen upholding human rights. As people around the world strive for peace and human rights, together we can help our governments to achieve and strive for peace and human rights. On behalf of all global citizens, we urge our governments to engage, to be open-minded in communication, including in multilateralism and diplomacy, to truly attain peace within the country and in the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Erica. Very interesting testimony. And yes, being global citizens is very important, as much as being, as you called it, a warm family. We are all members and children of this universe, and we all need to work together for the good. We now have a final testimony. The last but not least presenter is Mr. Arthur Hsieh. Arthur is product manager in ICT industry and a Tai Ji Men. Please, Arthur, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. I distinguish hosts and all the speakers today. I'm Arthur, and I've been practicing Qigong since I was 14 years old, and now I'm 27 years old. So during my 13 years of experience in Tai Ji Men, I learned not only the yin and yang wisdom of Tai Chi culture, but also a heart of understanding, tolerance, and unity from the Chinese culture, which has been passing down from thousands of years. Because my shifu, Dr. Hong Daozi, is not only the Zhangmenren of Tai Ji Men, but also the Vice President of the United Nations NGO Association of World Citizens, and the President of the Federation of World Peace and Love. I'm also a volunteer in promoting culture of love, peace, conscience, and human rights around the world. So today is the International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace. According to the UN Charter, the UN was established to safeguard international peace, and security, as well as to settle international disputes and conflicts that threaten peace in a peaceful and just way. So as a result, most countries believe that they should form like-minded international allies through multilateral foreign policy, support regional stability and peace, and avoid suffering the pain of 2 world wars again. So under the concept of global village, I believe that not only should countries work with one another through diplomacy, but we, as global citizens, should contribute to the vision of peace on earth. As Tai Ji Men Dizi and volunteer of AWC and Federation of World Peace and Love, we've been to over 100 countries as part of civil diplomacy under the leadership of Dr. Huang. We have interacted with national leaders, government ministers, and NGO and people to promote culture of peace conscience through cultural exchanges. So following that, I'd like to share 2 stories about my civil diplomacy experience. The first story on the progress in world peace. Everyone is the key man or key woman to unlock others' hearts. The Balkan Peninsula is at a crossroad of 3 continents, Europe, Asia, and Africa. Because of the multi-ethnic and intervention of powerful nations, complicated territorial disputes and religious conflicts have resulted in many wars. It is also known as the powder keg of Europe. So the Tai Ji Men Cultural Goodwill Group visited the Balkans in 2018. During the meeting with the representative of Kosovo Assembly Chairman, Dr. Huang presented the key to the heart and sharing the meaning of the key. He said, world leaders can use the key to not only open their own conscience, but also unlock the good heart of everyone, improve the world, and bring love and peace to all. Standing beside them at that time, I thought, the head of state who leads the people of a nation is undoubtedly extremely important. But what can I do as a citizen? Only after the representative praised our sincere smiles and happiness for bringing him with energy, did I realize that when a person can make people around him smile, he or she is a key man or key woman on the road to peace. Because a smile is a universal language, and as long as there is a smile, all conflicts can be resolved, and joy and happiness can be brought. The second story, mutual understanding through cultural exchange, bring me joy and inspiration for a lifetime. In 2019, we took part in a cultural exchange program organized by a local NGO in Irkutsk, Siberia, where I learned about the local people's culture of gratitude to nature and the earth on a small island on Lake Baikal. And in a cultural performance, we exchanged the courageous and wise through Oriental culture, that is dragon horse dance, with the loving and passionate through Western culture, that is social dance. I saw 2 distinct civilizations willing to set aside their differences and interact with their hearts in order to experience and learn about the truth, kindness, and beauty of the others. We may just have a one-time interaction with the local people, but the mutual understanding through cultural exchange provides us with a lifetime of enjoyment and warmth and inspiration in our hearts. So in addition to fostering worldwide love, peace, and cultural exchanges through civil diplomacy, in Taiwan, we also promote human rights and social justice through the partnership of AWC, professional scholars, and NGO. In the Tai Ji Men case, for example, the Supreme Court rendered a final not guilty decision, confirming that there was no fraud, no tax evasion, and no violation of Tax Collection Act, but the officials of the NTB disregard the court's decision and continue to impose an unjustified and unreasonable high tax bill based on the indictment materials that the court had abandoned. The NTB and the Administrative Enforcement Agency even forcibly auctioned Tai Ji Men's land, which was intended for a spiritual center in ignorance of due process of law. Despite the fact that state authorities have been persecuting us for more than a quarter century, my shifu has continued to lead Dizi, ensuring the culture of love, peace, and conscience, as well as mobilizing experts and scholars from various fields both domestically and internationally to speak out for justice, to unite the power and voices for all righteous people through forums, and to emphasize the importance of the rule of law in government, and even walk into communities and neighborhoods to hold seminars to educate correct knowledge about taxation knowledge and to introduce the Declaration of Taxpayers' Human Rights and Declaration of Human Rights for World Citizens. Because we have seen too many persecuted people on this road of fighting for justice, we hope to begin with basic human rights education, to awaken the power of conscience and justice in people's hearts, to gather more public opinion, to uphold human rights. And as long as there are enough voices in society, the government cannot ignore and should take action to improve the system and practice human rights. And I believe this is the power of democracy and the power of the people. Mother Teresa said, "Not all of us can do great things, but we can do small things with great love." I cannot stop the world immediately, nor can I persuade government officials to reverse wrongful judgment and illegal tax bill immediately. But I can continue to bring smiles to the faces of those around me with a heart for the world, and encourage and mobilize citizens to speak out against social injustice. The small trees will ultimately grow into a big forest. I believe that there will be more and more like-minded partners. And this is my form of multilateralism and diplomacy, in the spirit of love of the world that I learned from my shifu. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Arthur, for your testimony, your insights, and your observations. Before concluding the webinar, we have conclusions by Mr. Ivan Arjona. Ivan Arjona Pelado is the founder of the Fundación para la Mejora de la Cultura y la Sociedad, based in Spain, but it is connected from Brussels, where he mainly works from. Please, Ivan, the floor is yours for the conclusions.
Thank you very much, Alessandro, for the presentation. For sure, the first real thank yous must go to Dr. Huang for his teachings that he transmits through all his network of citizen diplomats, your Dizis, Dr. Huang. Before saying the conclusions, I could add a particular note about the meaning of diplomacy and the origins of the word itself, not of the action, but of the words. There is a funny joke by a Spanish linguist who says that diplomacy comes from diplo, which means double meaning of the words of what you're going to say, right? I'm sure this we find very much in the official diplomacy, but I do believe in the real diplomacy, which is diplomacy of people, which is helping have peace and communication among the different ones. I also want to thank the CESNUR and the Human Rights Without Frontier for allowing me to handpick some of the many important messages that have been delivered in this event today. It's in reality, whichever sentence or quotes I pick, I will be leaving aside others that were probably maybe even more important to some people. anyway, that's the hard task of making a conclusion. And of course, I want to thank Mrs. Camelia Marin and Alessandro Amicarelli for the wonderful moderations of the two panels. So in regards to the from the paper of Mr. Introvigne, I picked up a quote where he says that Tai Ji Men Dizi are not professional diplomats, yet they play a diplomatic role through friendship and culture. They know what their effectiveness is. They know that their effectiveness is rooted in self-cultivation, just as Giguzzi said so many centuries ago. And I totally agree with you, Mr. Introvigne, on this. Then the next speaker was Mr. Willy Fautre, who said that, and I quote, after over 25 years, Tai Ji Men, a civil society organization, still is in its quest for justice, in its conflict with the National Taxation Bureau. In the implementation of its multilateralism strategy, Tai Ji Men has managed to build up a domestic network and a transnational network of active supporters from all realms. And I think this is, Mr. Fautre, as you very well explained, it's key into achieving this common aim that we all have of having peace and justice in society. Then we go to our friend journalist Marco Respinti, always very incisive in his research and statements, saying bold truths. I picked up the sentence where he says that basically the citizen ambassadors of Tai Ji Men are repeating to the whole world what St. Augustine said centuries ago. And he gives a long sentence, and I extracted a little piece which says, the peace of all things is the tranquility of order. Order is the distribution which allots things equal and unequal, each to its own place. For sure. And I would add, Mr. Respinti, to this, the word of equity, right? Which means not to treat equally everyone, but treat them with equal justice, right? Then we have these amazing testimonies of very young people that, I mean, on my own beliefs, we are not really young or old, we are million years old. So we have a lot of experience, whether we remember it or not. And this goes with the passion that we speak about, that we heard today. So first one, we had Emily Huang, who said, in the purge of and persecution in the name of a crackdown, prosecutor Huang fabricated false witnesses and false evidences to frame the Tai Ji Men for fraud and tax evasion. Even a tax collector complicit in the perjury at the time revealed the truth about the case. I will repeat that one again. Even a tax collector complicit in the perjury at the time revealed the truth about the case led by Huang at the end of his battle against cancer. Then we have Joyce Huang, who says that though Taiwan is relatively safe, she feels insecure because the quarter-century-long persecuted Tai Ji Men case has not been vindicated. She says she has seen plenty of problems in Taiwan's tax system through this case. However, in Taiwan, Tai Ji Men has been oppressed and persecuted by the National Tax Bureau because of a false case 26 years ago, which resulted in an illegal tax bill. We go to a patent engineer, Mr. Hsieh, who explains that on May 2012 in Taiwan, the Bureau of Cultural Heritage Ministry of Culture was officially established to promote and protect intangible cultural assets and to ensure the important intangible assets do not fade away as the years pass by. However, he explains that despite of this purpose, they are not protecting an ancient Orthodox culture as Tai Ji Men. Instead, it's being politically persecuted. So I would encourage this cultural heritage bureau in the Taiwanese government to give them a hand. Then we have probably our most touching speaker of the day, not to diminish any of the other ones because they were all great, but it's good to see that we can learn from children, from Mollie, 9 years old, young and proud. She says that in school, teachers us that we need to be honest and correct the mistake if we did something wrong. So the National Tax Bureau, she says, should show their conscience and revoke the tax bill. So National Tax Bureau, we have a lot to learn from children. Open well your ears. She continues saying, in this way, we can practice Qigong properly in Tai Ji Men and promote love and peace and do good things in the world. Then we go to our student from New York University, who is currently in Argentina, but he has the university in the United Arab Emirates, who says that although I have been in an international community, I have realized that if I want to create an impact, the most effective and best place to implement it is in my local community, where I can give back to my society. I have thus adopted the mindset of think globally, act locally. I think it's a very good mindset to have, to think globally and act locally, because locally we can make a direct impact, but we need to have the international scene in mind to be helpful. And then the last speaker was Mr. Arthur Hsieh, a product manager, who told us, and I quote, because we have seen too many persecuted people on this road of fighting for justice, we hope to begin with basic human rights education to awaken the power of conscience and justice in people's hearts, to gather more public opinion, to uphold human rights, and as long as there are enough voices in society, the government cannot ignore and should take action to improve the system and practice of human rights, because this is democracy's power. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ivan, for concluding this webinar, for managing to pick interesting excerpts from the presentations in today's seminar. And we now conclude, as always, the webinar with a final video whose title is The Fabricated Tai Ji Men Case. And after the video, we can say goodbye to everyone. Thank you. Tai Ji Men案17元，违法起诉开水单，最高法院判无罪，无罪无水遭迫害，违法执行来拍卖，修行圣地遭破坏，阻碍修行罪也深，有法不依其名声，动摇无缘和世界，专心正义未曾现，期待公义显青天，显青天。数不尽满纸荒唐，心酸泪，海内外陈情不停歇，无罪无千岁早已判决，将为平凡令人心寒。为何滚滚相呼？
良心有残将金，违法虽但抢民产，动摇国本无人理，法虽改革救台湾。国内外四海同心求正义，为真上只有坚持到底，不畏惧强权来迫害，团结把假案肃平反。
师徒也千山万水同心行，一心努力保家园，无奈是违法官员不认错，太极门冤错有为宣。
无罪无罪一分明，顶天立地无愧心，
耗费光阴抗假案，一副无冤为臣情，
青丝白头换悲叹，人尽心酸更坚定，
太极门案必平反，青天民间正道行，
人无假是非明，捍卫真相显真理，
正义心护全民，平反假案显光明。
Thank you very much to the producer of this lovely, really lovely video. Very lovely music. Very, very, very nice indeed. I think we could conclude the webinar, but if anyone wants to add any final statement or remarks or just say bye-bye, please feel free to do so. Massimo, you want to say bye-bye?
I want to say bye-bye, and I also want to leave here memory and a tribute. A few hours ago in the United States, Senator Orrin Hatch died.
Oh.
And I remember Senator Hatch as a very brave man, which always stood with us when it came to support religious freedom throughout the world. So I believe we can dedicate this webinar to the memory of Senator Hatch and vote to continue his good fight for religious liberty. And I'm sure he would agree that that's the best way of honoring his memory. It was a privilege to meet Senator Hatch several times in the United States, both in Utah and in Washington, D.C. He was a devout member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and he was surely a warrior for religious freedom throughout the world. So thank you for letting me add this tribute to this webinar.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.